Number 10. IM Cooling Tower. Built in Charleroi, Belgium in 1921, Power Plant IM is a creepy abandoned power station that once served as the country's largest utility providers. At its peak, a whopping 6 million people relied on the company for their electric and gas. The plant's massive cooling tower was capable of cooling 480,000 gallons of water per minute. Water was let into the top of the tower and was cooled by incoming wind that entered through the openings at the bottom of the structure. It operated until 2007, when it closed its doors at the demands of environmental protesters. They blamed the plant for creating 10% of Belgium's CO2 emissions. Plans have been in place to demolish the plant for years now, but it hasn't happened yet. Its massive cooling tower still looms over the nearby neighborhood of Monceau-sur-Sambre. The structure stands as a shell of its former self after being gutted by trespassers looking for scrap metal. Its moss-covered interior looks like something out of a dystopian sci-fi movie. Parts of the property are finally being demolished, and security has tightened at the site, so catching a first-hand glimpse of the tower is unlikely. It's amazing to think that a place like this was once so powerful and now is just a massive, ghostly building. Number 9. 1992 World Expo remains. Nearly 42 million people visited Charterhouse Island, La Isla de la Cartuja, in Seville, Spain over a 6-month period during the 1992 World Expo. Over 531 acres, 215 hectares were used for the event, which celebrated the 500th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's departure from the port of Seville. Its theme was the Age of Discovery. Touring the massive site took several days. After the expo ended, most of its pavilions were demolished and its monorail track was removed. But the property still contains many remnants of the event, including monorail stations, exhibits, a sphere, a replica of a space rocket, and other decorative features which are being overtaken by nature. The eerily quiet streets still bear the expo's seal. There are some newer structures at the site, including a research building and an amusement park, which stand in stark contrast to their seemingly apocalyptic surroundings. The expansive zone that was reconstructed as a theme park was called Parque Isla Mágica. Although the event drew a massive crowd, it left Seville with decades-long debt and a sprawling site filled with decaying fixtures. The site may appeal to the curious urban explorer, but economically speaking, it's useless. Number 8. Kaiten. The Kaiten volcano in Chilean Patagonia erupted violently in 2008 after sitting dormant for over 9,000 years, hurling ash more than 10 miles, 17 kilometers into the sky. It was the first rhyolitic eruption to be observed in modern times. Rhyolitic eruptions are highly explosive, causing magma to spew catastrophically. Volcanic ash rained down on the town of Kaiten 6 miles, 10 kilometers away. Mud flows caused the nearby Blanco riverbanks to burst, turning one of the town's streets into a new channel. Around 5,000 residents were evacuated as buildings were buried in up to 5 feet, 1.5 meters of sediment. Today, Kaiten remains deserted and uninhabitable. It looks like it was a war zone. Its former residents are afraid of returning anyway. After all, who can blame them? They reported that earthquakes had gotten stronger and more frequent in the days leading up to the eruption, but had failed to realize the tremors were a sign of impending volcanic doom. I don't know about you, but if I felt a bunch of earthquakes and lived near a volcano, I'd get the heck out of there. They weren't the only ones who failed to make this connection, though. Even the scientists at the Chilean Geological Survey considered the volcano to be a non-threat and weren't monitoring it prior to the eruption. The Chilean government relocated the former residents of Kaiten and began working closely with scientists to develop a nationwide plan for addressing volcanic hazards. But returning to the town now seems unlikely. Number 7. Hachijo Royal Hotel. Prior to the 1960s, it was difficult for Japanese citizens to travel abroad, so the tourism industry focused on domestic destinations. The Hachijo Royal Hotel opened in 1963 on the volcanic island of Hachijojima in the Izu Islands archipelago south of Tokyo. The government promoted the island as the Hawaii of Japan, sparking rapid development and drawing an influx of visitors. People flocked to the Hachijo Royal Hotel, which was one of the most extravagant buildings on Hachijojima. Its French Baroque-inspired design included mutation Greek statues, fancy water fountains, an outdoor swimming pool, and picture-perfect landscaping. The island's glory days ended when international travel became more accessible for Japanese citizens. As people opted to travel just a little further away to the lavish beaches of Guam, Thailand, and elsewhere, the once bustling hotel became empty and outdated. By the mid-90s, it began showing signs of wear and tear. The island's tourism industry attempted to revive itself, but their efforts were in vain. After undergoing several ownership and name changes, the hotel closed in 2003. Today, the structure is in a sad state. It's deteriorated rapidly in a short time thanks to saltwater damage. Nature has reclaimed the once manicured property, turning it into what looks like a small jungle. The hotel sign is blocked by plant life, and the stairway leading to the entrance is moss-covered. What was once an upscale display of the finer things in life is now marked by the occasional crumbling statue or empty pool poking pitifully out of the vegetation. It wouldn't be surprising if an urban explorer saw the ghost of a tourist in a Hawaii shirt wandering around the hotel. Would you like to visit this creepy abandoned hotel? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Jayamana. During the 1970s, copper was discovered in the hills above the Romanian village of Jayamana. Villagers' lives were turned upside down when representatives for the then dictator Nicolae Ceausescu arrived and told them they had to move so that a mine could be built. Residents were offered generous sums of money for their homes in exchange for agreeing to move to a nearby village just 4.3 miles, 7 kilometers away. But that didn't mean they wanted to leave. At the end of the day, though, they didn't have a choice, and between 300 and 400 families became scattered throughout the country. The government went back on its big promises and compensated Jayamana's former residents with small parcels of land and meager cash payouts. During its heyday, the Rosia Poieni mine in Romania was Europe's second-largest copper mine. It employed over 500 workers and produced 11,000 tons, 22,000 pounds of copper every year. Jayamana was replaced with an artificial and highly toxic lake full of sludge and runoff from the mine. The contaminated body of water contains dangerous chemicals such as cyanide and is a bright red color due to toxins. It's engulfed the entire former village. The only visible reminder left of Jayamana is a church spire sticking out of the water. Number 5. Mermine. Also known as Mermine, the Mermine is an open-pit diamond mine in the remote wilderness of Siberia's Sakha Republic. At more than 1,722 feet, 525 meters deep, it's the fourth deepest mine on the planet. It's also one of the widest excavated holes in the world, with a diameter of 3,900 feet, 1,200 meters. Diamond deposits were discovered in 1955 as a part of the Soviet Union's efforts to make money and rebuild after World War II. The mine went into operation in 1957, but workers experienced difficulties mining in the harsh Siberian climate, which froze the ground for 7 months out of the year. With temperatures hitting as low as minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 40 degrees Celsius, car tires and steel shattered and oil froze. The crew thawed the ground using jet engines and broke through the permafrost using explosives. Despite these challenges, the Mermine was wildly successful, yielding gem-quality diamonds as big as golf balls. Production stopped in 2001 due to flooding and because it was deemed too dangerous to mine any deeper. The site closed in 2004 after operating for 41 years and producing $13 billion worth of diamonds. The mine was recommissioned in 2009, but operations haven't been easy, and it might be haunted now. In 2017, an underground flood trapped 140 miners, killing 8 of them. Number 4. Putan. Nearly 2,000 fishermen and their families once lived in the village of Putan on China's Schengen Island. The sleepy settlement was an entirely different world from the bustling city of Shanghai, just 40 miles, 64.4 kilometers away. The community thrived until the early 1990s, when its fishermen failed to keep up with the industry's growing demands. Most of Putan's population fled to the Chinese mainland and elsewhere in search of better opportunities. Only a handful of residents remain today. Nearly every building is overgrown with plant life, earning the village a reputation for being the greenest settlement on Earth. Inside the homes, things remain exactly as people left them. Furniture and other belongings have remained in place for decades and counting, frozen in time. Putan is now a tourist destination, leaving a bittersweet mark on the area for those who once called it home, and the few who still do. While the community is happy to profit from visitors, it has not revived the local economy. Number 3. Cape Romano dome houses. In the early 1980s, retired oil producer Bob Lee built a series of dome-shaped solar-powered structures on Caxambas Island in Collier County, Florida. He intended to use the 6 interconnected buildings as his family's luxury vacation home. Equipped with solar panels and rainwater recycling capabilities, the 2,400 square foot, 223-meter structure was designed to be entirely self-sustaining. It was also intended to be hurricane-proof, owing to its domed roofs. Lee sold the home in 1984, but he repossessed it from the buyer just 3 years later, remodeled it, and moved back in. When Hurricane Andrew hit in 1992, the buildings remained intact, but the windows were blown out and the interior was mostly destroyed. The Lees moved out, and the ocean slowly crept up on the property, which once stood 20 feet, 6.1 meters from the shore, thanks to storm damage and an eroding coastline. Lee sold the property yet again in 2005. He warned the buyer to build a seawall, but the man intended to move the house away from the water and ignored Lee's advice. Hurricane Wilma hit shortly thereafter and destabilized the home's foundation. The new owner still wanted to move the house, but couldn't get the necessary building permits. He refused to demolish it and began receiving fines to the tune of $250 per day. Then in 2017, Hurricane Irma caused 2 of the domes to collapse. All that remains of the weathered home are its 4 remaining partially submerged domes and a massive fine in the owner's name, courtesy of Collier County Code Enforcement. Number 2. Ciudad Real Airport. When you think of a creepy abandoned place, one of the first things that probably comes to mind is an old, decrepit building. But that's not always the case. Located 120 miles, 200 kilometers south of Madrid, the Ciudad Real Central Airport was in operation for just 3 years before it closed its doors in 2012. As Spain's first privately funded airport, it was planned and financed during a construction boom that occurred in the late 90s and early 2000s. But it didn't open until after the global financial crisis of 2008 had set in. International flights to and from Ciudad Real didn't begin until 2010. The only international flight the airport offered traveled to and from London via Ryanair, and the service was canceled just a few months later. Domestic flights continued until 2012. Ciudad Real was built to accommodate overflow from the airport in Madrid, but it was an inconvenient 2-hour drive from the city and there was no train station nearby. After the failed airport declared bankruptcy, critics speculated that it was built just to serve the interests of the construction industry. Enough loans had been taken out to cover the construction costs, but nobody had invested the amount of money that was needed to turn the airport into a functioning business. Number 1. Goosanville. The Parisian suburb of Goosanville-Vieux-Pays was once considered an attractive place to live. Home to 144 families, it retained a quaint, old-town charm but was close to the city. There were shops, cafes, a church, and even a weekend farmers market that drew customers from outside the village. Things took a turn for the worse in 1973 when a prototype for a Soviet supersonic jet crashed into the town during the Paris Air Show. The accident destroyed 15 houses and a school and killed 8 residents as well as the plane's crew. A year later, Charles de Gaulle International Airport opened nearby. The airport is so close to Goosanville, the neighborhood is considered part of the runway approach. Low-flying planes passed over the town day and night, causing unbearable noise and rattling the historic brick homes. Almost all of Goosanville's residents moved within a year after the airport opened. Some people were so eager to get away, they didn't even bother to sell their homes first. The airport bought 100 of the vacant houses in exchange for agreeing to take care of them, but the contract was never enforced. There are a few residents left, but the village consists mostly of abandoned squares, overgrown yards, and decrepit, boarded-up, graffiti-covered homes with broken windows. Some houses have been demolished, but many still stand despite their sad state. Because the village church is a protected property, nothing near it can be destroyed, sparing a good portion of the town from the wrecking ball. The church is one of Goosanville's only fixtures that has remained in good condition. As a historic monument, it's taken care of while everything around it rots. The commotion that once filled the town has been replaced with a chilling silence, punctuated by the deafening sound of some commercial jets passing overhead. Some of the last holdouts who refused to leave Goosanville tried to revive it in recent years, and the population has increased slightly, but the homes need millions of dollars worth of renovations. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn more about creepy abandoned places, let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, be sure to subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.